I was born in Ardmore, Oklahoma, 1938. We lived in a small house across the street from the elementary school that I went to when I was old enough, and my great-grandmother lived next door, and she was an old lady. She always had a garden. She had an outhouse. She had a well. She wouldn't have water in her house. She wouldn't have a bathtub in her house. But finally, my grandparents, they talked her into it. And I had one brother, and he lives in Irving. My mother's name was Helen Carman. Well, Helen Lewis Carman. My father was Pratt Carman. In 1932, my grandfather went from Gainesville to Ardmore and started the lumber yard. And they started building up Ardmore, and my last count was been a long time before my daddy died. He had built 29 houses. And I went around, I looked at all of them, I've seen everything. My grandfather and my grandmother run the office, and he sold stuff to people, and my daddy got old enough to he started building houses. She was born in Wynnewood, Oklahoma. That's north, up towards Oklahoma City. And then she married my father. She'd come down to visit an aunt or something, I don't know, and she married my father. And she had a seamstress shop in the front part of the lumber yard where the people come in to look at all the wallpaper. You get any kind of wallpaper and nails, and they had everything. It was elementary school across from our house, across the street. And I went from the first grade to the sixth grade there. And I had, I guess I learned a lot. And arithmetic and reading and all kinds of stuff like that. That's what they had back then. And we lived just right across the street, so my mother always cooked, and I would walk home for lunch and go back. But I always wanted to eat in the cafeteria. And I finally talked them into letting me eat in the cafeteria. And then I went on to junior high, which was quite a ways from there, going towards downtown Ardmore. And I went through I believe it was the 7th grade through the 9th grade. And I used to run around with the cowboys. And we would go out to the Wenham's Ranch or something and ride the horses and just have a big time. And then I rode in every parade in Ardmore on my white horse. I had a white outfit. I had pants, boots, a jacket, a white hat, a cowboy hat. Then I met my husband. I think I was just about ready to go to high school, and I met up with him because he lived on a different side of town than I did. And he worked in a hamburger place, like a fry cook or something, I don't know, just for money. And then we got married. Well, I got married when I was 18. We got married. And after that, he needed to make money, so he went to work. He knew some people out past town that where the guys would come in from the oil company, guys that come in and get stuff out of and so he started to work for Shell Oil Company as a engineer, seismograph engineer. And we went from Ardmore to Chickasha, Oklahoma. And we stayed there. And while I was there, I was only a block and a half from the college, University of Oklahoma Women's. So I went to school there, and I had 2 little kids by then, my first 2, and the lady that rented us the apartment, she kept the kids for me while I went to college. So then I got a degree in nursing. I'm a registered nurse. Well, I'm not anymore because I don't do a license and stuff. I retired. And then we went from there to Sayre, Oklahoma. That's going on farther north because he was working all through the western side of drilling oil. They drilled wells to find out if the oil was there before the guys brought in the thing and put the derrick up and started pumping it out. And we went from there to Arkansas, clear across Oklahoma to Arkansas, Booneville, Arkansas. And we were there for a while. And there was the Rockefellers in back east. They had a big mansion up on a hill, and so we would go up there. They was drilling on the Rockefellers' land, so they let them go up there and fish, and we'd go swimming and just have big times. And I got to meet Nelson Rockefeller while we were there. I was busy all the time with the two kids. And I thought, now this is getting crazy, because he was out and working all the time and everything. I said, this is getting plumb crazy. I said, I'm putting the kids in my car and I'm going home to Ardmore. And I did. I took off and went to Ardmore. I said, you come if you want to. At the time, I was pregnant with the last one. And I said, I'm going to Ardmore. I'm not going to have her. I'm not going to have it here, because then my mother would have to come there. So then I went back to Ardmore and had the third child. And we stayed there for a while, and then he got somebody he knew that was working at a place north of Ardmore. They were working out there at the airport, and they told him about Bell Helicopter. He said they're hiring, so he come down here and they hired him. So we came. He called me back and he said, I think I found us a house, and it was only a block and a half from Bell, so he could walk if he needed to. So then he came and got us, and we came down, and we've been here ever since. 62? I think it was around that time. Michael, my oldest son, lives in Arlington, South Arlington. He's a technical engineer for all the Baylor hospitals in the area, Dallas, Fort Worth, and all around. And he did real good with his. He went to college. Laura Carroll, she's the one who brought me just now. She lives next door to me. She was working for a rubber stamp company on Pipeline Road. They were born in Ardmore. And then my youngest daughter is where I was up at the ranch in Gainesville, Sammy Sue. She worked for, when she was going to L.D. Bell, she took, I guess it was to learn a trade. So when she got out, she would go to work, go right away. So she was training banking at L.D. Bell. And the Chase Bank that was on Pipeline Road at the time, there at Hurstview, she was working there at nights and going to school in the daytime. And she was just took to it like a duck to water. And I wasn't going to have no more kids. 10 years later, I had Larry up at the Old Hearst Hospital. Larry Cole. He lives in, he's a builder. I got to know Larry Cole, a football player, because they had an office there when they was building all those houses in Hearst, and his wife. So when I had Larry, I named him Larry Cole, because Larry Cole was a big football player back then. And he played football at L.D. Bell, and he did good. I mean, he really did. He did really good. He does all kinds of builds cabinets and trim, and he stays busy all the time. He works for all kinds of Ross Perot. He's worked for them and his son. He started out making parts and stuff like that for the helicopters. And then someone had left the autoclave, which is a big thing that you push all this stuff in and bake all the stuff that they put on the helicopters, blades and all that. So he picked that up over there, and he did that they took him right in. And he took to that like duck to water too. And he was there for 25, 30 years, I believe. And he'd retire because he'd been there 30 or 35 years. So he took early retirement when he was 65. And then he started building. He put in fence, all the fence around the buildings and doors and stuff like that. He would put the fence all the way around the houses for Larry. All over up there, and then all the way out, clear out to Keller, where he built a bunch more houses out there. We lived on Bluebonnet, and it was a block and a half from Bell Helicopter going north. And Bel Air Elementary, there was no Kroger's up there. There was no shopping center. There was nothing hardly up there back then. And they were doing Pipeline Road. They were fixing Pipeline Road. And the hospital was up there. And the going down the hill on Pipeline was Buddy's Supermarket, and my neighbor next door, she worked there. She did the books. She lived next door, Viva Jean Copeland and her husband Dick Copeland. She was on the city council before she died. Oh yeah, Tony Tataravish. That was, where there was a lumber yard right up there past Bell Helicopter, and his was right there on the corner. Tony Tataravish, yeah. And you can go in and point to what you wanted, and he'd take it out and cut it for you and package it up. And they were just real nice people. I knew Lorraine for a long time. She was a good friend. And then they built Morrisdale over there past going east. It was just a big, fine addition of big, high, fine houses. And then across the street from that, on the north side of Pipeline, going east, was the hog farm. And I mean, you could smell it. It cleared to my house when the wind was up. The Peacock farm was I live on Bluebonnet, and then there's Bel Air, right here. And there was no road across the street on Bel Air. It was just a dirt road going down to Rickle Park. There was no Rickle Park, but there was a creek down there, and my kids would go down there and splash around in the water. And the Peacock farm was on the east side. I mean the south side. And what's his name? Rickle. Old Man Rickle. That's what everybody called him. He had those peacocks, and he had some cows down there. And you could hear them, just like you smell the pigs. You could hear the peacocks down there. And my kids would ride their bicycle down to Rickle Park, and put their feet in the water and all that. They didn't have the bridge going across then, and all the tables and all that. It was just a place. And then my son, my youngest son, later on, he had a friend around on off of Brown Trail, and they would get on their little motorcycles. They had these little yellow Suzuki motorcycles. He got one first, and then so Sam went and bought one for Larry, and they'd ride down down the dirt road and in and out the culverts and all around. And my oldest son was in the same grade as Steve Moore, Chief. I know him like my own son. They lived around the corner from us there on Redbud. He grew up around there, and they used to go down there's a pond. They'd go down and catch pollywogs and put them in a big jar. You used to buy big pickles in a big old jar, and we'd save that. My daddy would bring that from Oklahoma. He'd bring us every time they come, one of those big bottles, and we'd put the pollywogs in there. And that's where my kids went down there, and I never worried me that they'd fall in or anything, because they knew they weren't supposed to do this, that, the other. I worked in nursing homes for a lot of years, and I worked in hospitals, HEB Hospital, Grapevine Hospital, Parkland Hospital, downtown, All Saints. I worked at a nurse's aide. I worked as a nurse's aide in nursing homes, all different shifts. I worked in Richland Hills at Boulevard Manor. I worked on down the road at Richland Care Center, or something like that. And then a little bit farther on down, Dr. Craddock was a doctor over there, so I got in with him, and he would tell me, if they need somebody over here, and so I'd go. And after I left Bishop Davies, I went over there on this side of town over here. And I worked up at Grapevine with the Lancasters, Dr. Ed and Dr. Minnie Lee. I worked in the Grapevine Hospital and a nursing home there, too, as you go into Grapevine. I worked at Parkland, but I didn't like Parkland because it was just, they didn't have anything right. And there was always all kinds of stuff coming into the emergency room. I've seen everything. My kids went to Bel Air, and I was up there all the time to make sure they were in their chair and and I started the library there. And I was the PTA president at one time, and I didn't have anything else to do. I wasn't working or anything back then, so I just, went up there and did what I could and learned all that stuff and to make sure they were learning. They went to Hurst Junior High, over to Hurst Junior High there on Redbud, L.D. Bell. They were always having programs and stuff, and I was up there a lot because I wasn't working much then. I'd already retired. Bobby Jean and Dick Copeland. He just he worked on people's lawnmowers. He had a nice garage in the back, and everybody'd take their lawnmowers to him if they needed to be fixed or whatever. And he'd kind of gotten older then, and he'd kind of slowed down, but she hadn't. Me and her'd go to Branson. Yeah, we'd go every chance we could get. Me and her, we'd jump in the car and go. She was on the city council, and the office was over there at the old courthouse where they went to meet, and they needed somebody in, I think it was Parks and Recreation. And she said, come with me this evening, and we'll talk to and they'll hire you to let you be the. So they did, and I was on the Park and Recreation Board for 25 years, and I seen all the parks and all the everything come. Well, we could make the suggestion. We'd get it together, and everybody'd vote, and then we'd take it to the city council or to the city hall and tell them that's what we wanted, And pretty near every bit of it got done. Well, the library for one. Chisholm Park, yeah, the swimming pool. Rickle Park, yeah, that's come a long ways. Redbud, yes. Larry Kitchens lived over by Redbud, so he pretty well took care of that one and brought it to the meetings, and how it was going along. My husband goes there every morning, walks around that track. And I got to thinking one time, Jonathan Sticklin, he's our state representative. One time he said to me, I was helping him handing out cards and stuff, and we were getting reelected. He said, "Did you know your name's on everything in Hearst?" I said, "Well, I've been pretty active, all those plaques beside when you go in the swimming pool and on the recreation center over here, and just all the library. And, of course, with a little help with Viva, we had built Hearst up. And then Bill Souter, he'd let us do anything. Yeah. He'd come to my house, and he'd come in and sit down and watch TV and visit, and Dodie'd say, we got to go home. Or I'd go over there and help him, when he was running to help him get elected and stuff like that, and we'd have pizza parties, and yeah, he was a good friend. Down there by the recreation center, when we came, there was a swimming pool down there at the end. It was they called it the cement pond. And then the creek was over here, and then that was before they built the new swimming pool and the diving board and all that kind of stuff, I was there when they had done that, and they had a little thing you could buy food in there. That was all during Bill Souter, I think. Because I wanted Hearst to have everything, and the place for the kids to play, and it did bring people into Hearst. Well, he was always a real good. If I wanted anything, I'd go tell Alan. Well, that's the way I am, though. If I want something, I just go to whoever's in charge and tell them I think we ought to do this, and I stand right there until they say, okay, we'll do it. Yeah. I've just always been real outgoing, I guess you'd call it that. But he's just a good guy. I was 25 years on the park board, and I think it's right at 15 years on the historical. And about the same time, Betty Whiteside. We talk about all the old Hearst, like I was talking about Parker Cemetery up there. I didn't know much about that until we started digging into it. I went up there one day. I go up there once in a while, see the cemetery, go and see. And there used to be a house there, and they took it somehow or another. Fort Worth got a hold of it. It was over in Fort Worth one time, but it's in good shape. Republican women of Texas. Oh yeah, I spent a lot of time in Austin. Especially Rick Perry, and of course Governor Abbott too. He's a good friend. There's a picture of me and Rick Perry up over my desk. My husband calls him my boyfriend. But he was a nice guy. Yeah, I could get anything out of anybody down there, too, that I wanted. And Senator Nelson and Kay Bailey Hutchison. Well, I knew them all. I went to all the meetings, to see what was going on in Fort Worth or the surrounding places. I was on the Republican Party. I still am. I have my oldest granddaughter lives in Bedford. She's married and has a little girl, which is my great grandchild. And then I have a grandson, and he has a little boy. My great grandson. He's into all the sports there is in Hurston out that way. And he'll call me up and he'll say, "Granny, come on over. We got to go play. You got to watch me play." My son Larry, that lives in Hazlitt, he has a daughter. He has a son and a daughter. We have big time at Christmas and Thanksgiving. They all come to my house. And Easter, we got to have Easter egg hunts. Mason will call and he'll say, "Granny, we're going to play. Are we going to hide eggs?" I said, "Yep, come on over here because we're going to hide eggs." And I put money, quarters and stuff like that in the false ones. Oh, he loves to find that. Well, the swimming pools, for one thing. The nice swimming pools for people. And on each side of town. Oh, the library. I want us to have a library. And then I didn't care much about the new city hall. I liked the old one. I thought they'd just build onto that. Then they built that whole big building over there. I had to go to all the council meetings, and because I always had something to talk about, I'd barrel up there and tell them what I thought. I'd stand up and say, "I think it ought to be this way or it ought to be that way." Dodie used to get so bad at me. They all know me. I've helped them all get elected. And I pay attention, to who's getting elected and who I think ought to be elected. We want people that knows Hurst, most of all, and that can get things done. I just think it's a good place. I've never even thought anything about moving or going anywhere, because I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep right on going.